This was not supposed to happen. This was meant to be the summer of DFM, the super team, the potential unbeaten run. But V3 and Rascal Jesters do not give a damn about your storylines. They do not give a damn about your expectations. You disrespect them at your peril because they are here to win. Now, the challengers face off. Who will win, Rascal Jesters or V3? Just have to find out.
Well, this is not going to script. DFM potentially undefeated, aiming for a 14-0 with maybe the strongest roster the LJL has ever seen. While V3 and Rascal Jester are having none of it, and now they, after taking down DFM, are going to be swinging at each other. This is the game to watch. Do not miss it. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell the person at the grocery store. Just make sure you watch it.
Must one here for LJL, and the reason I'm excited for V3 Esports versus Rascal Jester is that mid-jungle duo. In the spring season, we saw Hachimecha and Recap have an advantage in the matchup in the regular split. However, in playoffs, V3 Esports came back with renewed vigor and came over with a 3-0, and a lot of it was to do with Ace and Mugen preventing Hachimecha and Recap from doing that. Important note as well, for Summer Split, both the mid and jungle duo was pivotal in their matchup versus Detonation Focus Me, and I expect it to be a pivotal moment in their matchup this week.
Welcome back, everybody, to our match of the week. V3 Esports taking on Rascal Jester. Reed, could you do me a favor and bring up the predictions one more time, please?
This one's going to be such a barn burner.
Oh, man. You heard from Muddlecop, from Mass One, of course, dear old Nightmare there. Some of their thoughts on this one coming into the game, but you can see we are split on who's going to be ahead in this matchup.
Absolutely. Of course, V3 dominant last game, and I have predicted Rascal Jester to take this one. And in fairness, I look at that last game and say, okay, the game went to how V3 wanted it to. I don't think V3 are going to get that same experience, the red carpet into the 5v5s that CGA granted them. Rascal Jester, again, very solid coming out of that first week. They had a bit of a comp advantage versus DFM. You can argue that V3 didn't. Maybe V3 played stronger to get that victory. But Rascal Jesters, particularly their bot lane, shined strong.
It's a little alarming when both play-by-plays go for V3, but both analysts on here go for Rascal Jester. I have got a soft spot for the Jesters. I really do. I love this team. I think they're so exciting.
Many people do.
I'm glad, they got a regular season win against DFM. All of that stuff is fantastic. That's very unusual for this team. They look good. Problem is, they're up against V3 Esports, who look absolutely phenomenally clean right now. Thresh is in meta. That's great for Ryan. Mugen can play everything under the sun, and Hachimecha, while he's a fantastic and, how do I put this? Smart, cerebral, early pathing jungler. I just think Mugen's ability to take over a game early could give V3 the edge here, especially when potentially there is an angle to attack the top side of the map.
Okay, so that's our look at the predictions. Of course, screenshot them when you can, and flame us for it on Twitter. Flame it anywhere, honestly. Just flame us all the time. We deserve it, right? But one of the hallmarks of this matchup in the playoff series that we saw last split between these two teams, where V3 3-0'd Rascal Jester.
Yes.
After Rascal Jester seemed to be the team to take down DFM. They were the contenders to the throne. They were, if there was going to be a team, it was going to be them. Well, that didn't happen, did it? Because V3 totaled them in that lower bracket final. To me, that came through. Mugen having an excellent read on Hachimecha. Having an excellent read on how they could snowball a game on stuff like the Olaf versus the first big hacker, in which Rascal Jesters were loath to pivot away from.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case here. I don't think there's enough data to know what the Rascal Jesters would be first picking every time. It is a best of one. That's the thing. It only takes one good read, we have a good read on the production as well.
One shot, one opportunity.
To get that one advantage and the early game plan to run through this team. And this is going to be such a hallmark for the rest of this split, because this determines who really is the king of the hill for most of this split.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They're both teams here. If Jesters win, they end up taking the lead here. They've got another game to play. They could potentially move to 4-0. If they lose as well, you can tie it at the well, you can't tie. You end up at the 3. You could potentially get to the 3-1. But either way, the point is, this matchup is pretty important. I apologize for the slight digression there. I guess at this point as well, it's time to start diving into some of the more important matchups. And my eyes inevitably go towards the bot lane, especially after that last game where V3 proved they were willing to play through Reiner and Hollow, get them ahead, especially when the Jesters do not look like the Jesters if Sol and Secret are not firing.
But they have been firing so far. And even in that playoff series, which they lost, it was still Sol looking incredible, Secret looking solid too. The question is that going to be enough? And is this going to be a kind of another game where the Rascal Jesters aren't given that ability to scale up through Sol, not going to give them the priority pick? Is he going to get an Ezreal? He's going to get himself a Jinx, something that can late game team fight to their heart's content. I don't know what V3 have in plan to deal with a similar hyper carry bot lane to the one which they played through last game, but it has to be on the cards because that has been the calling card for Rascal Jester.
It really has, and for that reason alone, I think Thresh goes up in value purely because of the amount of other AD carries it brings up as an option. The Jinx is Helios big time to both of these players in some ways. And I suppose the other one, of course, has to be towards that jungle, right? Mugen and
we just talked about that, right?
Yeah, are two of our more important junglers to their teams, right?
And we won't spend as much time on that because we already kind of talked about the previous series. Okay, well, Mugen had a really good read on Hatchmetra and the Jesters and how they would draft. So the question is, again, in a best of one setting, do they have that same breed? Is that going to give them the same advantages? I would hazard a guess at not, because there isn't the obvious first pick jungler. I mean, there's the Shinzo, right? But I don't think there is as easier a way to counter the Shinzo early like the Hecarim was. At least the Hecarim was like, oh, you can't play around top early, so we can draft a topside very heavy focused draft with Cog doing very strong things on stuff like a Volibear or an Urgot or a Gnar or something like that. So for me, it is going to be a lot about how is the early pressure going to go through for both these junglers?
Cut you off there briefly because I want you to play devil's advocate.
All right.
You're calling for Rascal Jesters. But what do V3 need to do to take the win away on this one?
Take Kanatu off of comfort. Don't give him Renekton. I would actually suggest putting Kog'Og on a lane bully, like something like the Volibear, like Gnar. Kanatu has not favored well against Kog'Og specifically with that. On something like a Renekton, again, I think that was when he had the 1v2 outplay actually versus them in the regular season of last split. But you can't allow this rookie player, the rookie of the split from last split, to come in and have a favorable matchup or something that they know, like cover to cover the book of that matchup. That's one thing. You need to upset Hatchemetra early. That's realistically, both of those things are how V3 won their series versus Rascal Jester last playoffs. Outside of that, you just need to be stable. I think you just need to make sure that Rascal Jester is not stable and make things more volatile into Cog, into Mugen.
Okay, then. So I've got a list of things I think the Jesters would need to do to take this one away as well. So one, get Sol on something he can destroy kids on. Ezreal comes to mind. We know what he can do on the champion. Kai'Sa's pretty good. Sennavar's. There's a lot of options here, but I want to see him something that he can get some agency on and do some stuff with. 2, ban or take Lee Sin. Do not give that to Mugen. Last week showed that should never be an allowable thing. That should never be on the pitch.
Punishable by game loss and
severe
destruction of Nexus.
Yes. Or at least be able to track Mugen. That's the other one I think is the really, really big ticket. If you can hold Mugen accountable or keep him down in the early game, V3 are significantly less threatening. So those are my 2 big tickets as far as it comes to Rascal Jesters.
Okay, so in that case, in terms of tracking stuff, does that mean we're going to see some level 1 shenanigans? We haven't seen that much. We haven't seen much of that, because what you stand to lose in the majority of situations is a lot of information in terms of jungle starts, in terms of wards being put down, and everything else. So you don't tend to see that so much. So then the question is, will we see something random like a Lilia to invade Raptors? Something like a Kayn, Hatchemetra plays that too, right? Are we going to go see something like that, which can invade onto Raptors, have a very fast clear, and get available map space very early into the game? Say, I full cleared with 30 seconds to spare. What have I got to do on the map? I wonder if that's an option.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of junglers still available in terms of thinking like Rumble. Still very powerful at the minute. Which of these junglers have put time and feel comfortable?
The level 1 Rumble doesn't want to fight.
It's true, exactly, and that wouldn't be very good for the level 1. You're right. I mean, Morgana's kind of fallen out of favor, but that was a big thing not so long ago. The Lee Sin, the Xin Zhao we've talked about. There's quite a lot available in the jungle pool right now that could make things tricky. or interesting, particularly in those early levels. I suppose the other one we probably want to keep an eye on is sort of things like the brush control as well, right? Like that was such a big deal for both these guys. Can they play around that level 1 ward in the lane brush?
Potentially, yeah, because that depends on if it's a hook versus hook matchup or if it's hook versus enchanter. Because what you'll often see is, particularly if you have something like a set support, whatever, which again, set very powerful in the current meta right now. I think that Rhino has been maybe our best set in the league too, and that's with having Ace on their team, who is an incredible set mid player. Suddenly that means that you can start all inning with flash level up, because actually set prefers having hex flash to flash in a lot of ways, because you sit in the brush, just hex flash out of it for aggressive plays. Potentially that's something too. I mean, there's a lot of different options they have. And again, a lot of that will come down to what's happening with the junglers, because if you have to fake leash, if you actually have to leash, there's options to be had. And a lot of these lanes have shown a propensity for fighting early, or at least winning the arm wrestle early. It's not like LPL, everyone flashing at level 1 for HP advantages, but it is still priority, and it's still damage, and it's still control.
I want to throw in a bit of a curveball, so we're still waiting to go into picks and bans here as well. Tell me about where Gwen falls in priority for these teams in this matchup.
So I think that entirely depends on how Cog is with his Gwen counters, because I don't think that Kanatu will have the best answer to it. So again, stuff like the Renekton actually does somewhat well into the Gwen. So again, that's Kanatu's come for pick. I want to see the Renekton banned from the side of V3. I don't think it's wise to give Kanatu that. I think that, say, if Cog can play the Gnar into the Gwen, which we've seen occasionally, suddenly the Gwen starts falling down, because that's a bit of a trap pick. Because if you have counter prepared, that is something worth noticing. Then the question is, do the junglers have that prepared? Hatchemetra, again, we say he's a Kayn player. This guy has some weirder stuff in the back pocket compared to a lot of the junglers in the region. We don't see... Have we seen a single Gwen jungle so far? I don't think we have. Not on the LJL.
Not on the LJL, at least.
Not on the LJL. So then the question is, because you know that this potential flex pick is not a flex pick, you know it's going to one lane, if you have those prepared counters, then we might see it less on the priority list.
Thank goodness. Into draft. Lee Sin, first ban from Rascal Jesters. I cannot begin to tell you how happy I am to see that off the table. The Thresh is an important one as well from V3, because it limits what's available for Soul and Secret. The Renekton, the Set, all of these are smart and appropriate bans, both in the meta and versus their opposing teams. Wow,
it's almost like a pre-game meant something.
I know, that's kind of impressive. We don't do that normally. We're not that smart.
You know something that we do normally do? We run down the rosters. So for V3, because I normally do the resume, we have Cog, Mugen, Ace, Hollow, and Rhino.
Indeed. Over for Rascal Jester, though, it's still going to be Kanatu, Hatchemetra, Recap, Soul, and Secret. Who knows what secret he's keeping, but he's got a lot of them, it turns out. And a final ban is all we're waiting on here.
So is it going to be the Jin's house? Going to be the Volibear instead. So Cog schooled some kids on this in top lane. He was beating out Ebby, of course. As we said, he gave as good as it took in that series in the finals versus DFM. Was coming back from MSI, new patches. DFM have been... Well, not quite just yet. It's only the first couple of weeks. Have been dethroned somewhat, though. They've been slapped. The Exodia scattered to the winds. V3, going back to some more comfort with the flex pick of the Karma.
All right, then. Hatchemetra, though, will get a hold of the Jin Zhao as a response, which is definitely pretty strong. Varus as well. Very high priority around the world, and will go towards Soul. Good setup, good poke. A lethality or on hit, though. Lethality has generally been the call at the minute. Karma can do some work with the shields, of course, but you hit a Serpent's Fang and those shields need a little less. Considering a Wukong here, but it's going to be instead the Olaf for Mugen, probably.
The reason that Wukong was considered is that Wukong into Karma in top lane is very bad for the Karma. It is a dive threat, it is a 1v1 threat, it is a side lane that, while it goes well in the early game, can bleed out badly come mid and late game. They're going to pick up the Mugen.
Pick up the Mugen? They just pick him up. That's what Mugen really looks like, guys. He's a giant Viking.
Pick up the Olaf, because, again, Mugen has been lethal at how he approaches the early game on this champion. Ace gets the LeBlanc. Everyone's picking up today. Welcome back to the LJL. And this is one of Ace's better playmaking picks.
It is. Either that is now double AP solo lanes plus Mugen on the Olaf, which potentially makes sense, honestly, if you're wanting to focus towards the bot side. Karma for Cog would certainly be a relatively self-sustaining pick. Rascal Jesters, though, will pick up the Gwen. It's been much higher priority this week, it feels, for the LJL, but it is still getting through picks and bans. I'll have to see whether V3 feel like they have an answer, and whether if it is the Karma, that can deal with the issue here.
Well, this is the thing. So obviously V3 banned out the Lulu themselves, which, as we said, is somewhat of a cancer to the Gwen. It holds lane. Gwen doesn't get individual advantages, gets bullied around, can fall down in trades as well. It gets quite low from those. But now you have the Gwen uncontested in that front. So we now have to go back up towards Kogog and say, what you got? This is a pick which is the common counter off the table, but Kogog had prepared, for instance, in the last playoffs again, a lot of counters to the top lane pick at the moment of the Gnar. He had 3 picks. They didn't exactly work out, but he had them prepared. What work has gone into the Gwen, though? Because again, week 1, this pick was not as valuable to the LJL as we would have liked to see.
No, it was not. We'll see whether they have the options. And honestly, you can play towards the Gwen here with the Jintao as well. Like, you've got a lot of damage there to blow somebody up. And the Gnar ban as well makes this assume, for at least, that they are thinking that Karma is going down bot side, or at least the potential there, so they're trying to pinch that pool. Ezreal is still up, I want to know. And that is a fairly good pairing level 1 with the Karma,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely. That is very much an option. But as you can see, Rascal Jester's trying to ban away some of Kog's better matchups. Of course, I've heard bits and pieces about the knockdown into the Gwen, because Gwen rushes at you and you have the fear, which means that you can disengage as and when you want, and that stops the Gwen from taking the longer trades that they really want. It can be a bit more bursty, particularly with the Stride Breaker built up later. Recap, having most of their comfort champions taken away in this one, but they have left up the Zoe, which was one that had great success even in spring when Zoe was picked a little less. Of course, that was the pick which he solo killed Arya on when he was playing his Twisted Fate on the first or second regular split match of spring 2020.
Yeah, and it's double poke, right? You've got
2021,
AP from Zoe, you've got AD from the Varus, they can poke from miles away. You've got quite interesting frontline options with the Hallowed Mist and the Crescent Guard to buy space.
Again, the temporary frontline.
You make a lot of sense there. Instead, it will be a Senna and the Tom Kench locking. Gets all the way through picks and bans. They pivot it towards the end. They decide, yeah, we are not going to throw the Karma bot side. We'll throw it into the Gwen. And now it's one last pick for Rascal Jesters to round out their comp.
And it is last pick, 10th pick support. You see a Varustab. Potentially, you could look for something like a Rel, which can deny the shields and give you some more hard engage. But it's less good into something like
Secret
Full
Bard.
Blanc. Bard is definitely something they can set up for the poke. You put down that the Temper Fate, and suddenly you've got bubbles and arrows galore flying at the targets which are caught out. But you are now a squishy support versus LeBlanc, which is a assassination option. That's just the expected delay. I have actually ended up blocking and then switching picks around. So we have the Varus Bard on the bot side. Strong level 1, good poke, does bully out the Tom Kench, is good in the 2v2. I'm just worried what happens if Ace gets rolling again, something which I asked last game. It didn't happen from the side of CJ. Ace next on the table to show us what this assassin's got.
Secret's Bard was something he was super famous for out in the LCK when he was playing out there. He was quite the Bard player back in the day, alongside, I want to say Key over for Escape Ever at the time.
Ever 8 winners, yes.
Ever 8 winners. Who were Escape, who were like, they'd of course
ESC Ever, not Escape.
That's what it was. I just
ESC,
ESC just call it Escape because I think the Escape key. But you're right.
Well, they did escape from the league quite soon after that point, as they played quite poorly.
They
had that one Casper Cup that was great. Everything after that
was
not so good.
I think Athena, who was a big Varus mid player, went over to the LPL.
They had that one Casper Cup, left the LCK for the LPL money, and has done pretty well out there.
Has indeed, but we've got ourselves the rosters there. I'm excited to see this part. I think it's an interesting one. I think you got the Tom Kench in particular is quite a good counter. You just Tempered Fate him, and whoever he's got in his belly, and you can kind of collapse on them. It's not as easy to save. Both bot lanes, I suspect, going to be points of pressure, as well as this mid lane. LeBlanc feels like a lot of the playmaking for V3 in this game.
Once again, absolutely, yeah. Because LeBlanc is the champion that can safely go in and get out. And there are assassination opportunities. I mean, you can start baiting out a lot of different abilities. If you get the Mist, if you get a Crescent Guard, if you're that strong as well, if you're threatening to burst out the Jintao, that is a huge win for your team. Immediately we're onto the Rift. We have level 1 shenanigans as Ace W's over the wall to get a ward onto the enemy red buff. So this should be a scouted start for Hatchemetcher.
Indeed, you could see that he's hanging around by his Raptor Pit, but I think it's been fairly obvious a bit of ward come through. And once again, it's the Ghost Tech for Gwen. It didn't work out in the last game, but honestly, the more I'm seeing it, the more I'm liking it as an idea.
It doesn't give you lane pressure, but against an enchanter, what is lane pressure anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because they nullify lane in a way which is so awkward. One thing which I'm really interested to see, because we didn't see this last game from, well, that was the Lulu, no, we had the Lulu support, but we did have the, no, we had the Lulu top, right? So once you complete your first 2 items, you can very much pick up the enchanter item after that point. You can pick up the spell thieves, because you don't really want to have
You want
any
to take
gold
more
after
gold.
that
Yeah, you don't
point.
want to take CS.
What I would be very interested to see is Cog, once they pick up their first 2 items, assuming that they're going enchanter instead of going for something a bit more bursty, which is less likely, will they, at that point, go towards the Spell Thieves and try and maximize gold input whilst getting farm onto the LeBlanc in the center? Oh, it's Tom Kench, because, you know.
Level 1 ward wars continuing down here as well. I thought Jester's managed to just about secure it, but no, both teams will have their wards taken out. But it is Secret that is holding court right now, yeah.
Well, the level 1 trades, particularly with Electrocute and Ignite coming in from Secret, very, very high damage, because you know that you're not going to get all in by a center tank pitch. Not realistically. So that Guardian, not so valuable at that point. We see Cog and Kanatu trading, and Cog hopping back into the bush, disengaging minion aggro, just making sure that Kanatu's having an awkward time of it.
Is that a minion dematerialized that the recaps picked up?
Incredible.
Oh, is that what it is?
Incredible.
Oh, yeah. It's just a... Oh, so it is. It's just a different symbol, right? Because I'm so used to the new Rocket Bell symbol.
Rocket Bell, not Proto Bell. I see. The thing is, back in day, I was an Ari main of the
you played Ari
of the Proto Belt building variety, when it was super strong, when Cannon was very strong with that too, and I've kind of never really gotten over the name change since then because first off, I haven't built it for several years. I don't build it now, so I've not really transferred that knowledge. Plus, I'm a color caster. I just need to know what the item does, right?
Apparently so.
Lore doesn't matter to gameplay.
What does the item do?
Damage.
Moving on. Okay. Muujin clearing towards his top side. Gwen is shoved under tower, but that's no real surprise versus Karma early on. It is range versus melee. All the while, though, Sol and Secret are doing the same on the other side. Xin Zhao starts up the Scuttlecrab. Hollow will roam up, but I don't think there's going to be much to get from that. The knock-up breaks the shield, and Muujin does the same to the top side Scuttle.
Well, he doesn't break the shield because he doesn't have no mobilize. He could use the smite. In fact, he did. So smite. I mean, this is something which has brought a lot of different junglers back into the meta, as if that, because a lot of the time it's not about Scuttle fights. It's a lot about how fast you clear. Just by smiting it gives you a lot of different options. Kanatu has been poked out. Of course, doesn't have. I mean, we've seen occasionally barriers taken on Gwen as well into rough matchups instead of the ignite if you don't have that kill pressure. Kanatu though sat at half HP, gonna get hit by the ult Q as well. This is now a realistic dive threat.
Unfortunately so. The waves coming down. Recop has teleport, but Hachimecha will just move over to the Raptors to try and secure these. Ace will come over, but I don't know how much threat he's going to have. Misses the chain. Will go over the wall trying to pick up some of the minions, but I don't think he did.
He got any of them.
No,
actually.
He just helped Hachimecha on the clear though. Nice idea, but doesn't work out.
It's one of my favorites. Just screwing with the enemy Raptors or even your own ones, right? Because if you get, this is something that we saw from the LeBlanc versus the Galio last game. You can push up early, and if you do end up getting a ward over the wall, suddenly like, ooh, I'll have myself some of that chicken to go. Doesn't happen this time though. And while there have been some look-ins, some thoughts, some inklings, nothing has really come to bear yet. Not just yet.
Muujin going to start up the Raptors over here and try and trade back for Hachimecha's temerity of taking his own. Raptors will replace the wall down there, and Hachimecha spots that they're gone and will instead clear towards the other side. Muujin with a slight early CS advantage because of the first clears and which camps were left up. But aside from that, not much more to write home about.
And the other thing is that, of course, he stole the Raptors on the top side and the Krugs, whereas Hachimecha couldn't do that. It's harder to get down to Krug skills against a level 2, against the inactivity 2. Unless you have, again, something that can follow up very easily, like your Aphelios Thresh that can crush early, or something like a Callista 2. It doesn't have that in that side, though. But what these lost in regular camps, he'll pick up in a Dragon instead. That will be a neutral objective stack for Rascal Jester.
And he gets a couple of those healing shrines as well. So feeling pretty happy about it, and that's the price of the reset timing from Muujin. That's the price of the Raptor invade. And Hachimecha goes straight back to clearing. And again, this game, nothing much separating anybody here, as Cog just abusing with the renewal there, using the Hallowed Mist there as well to stop out the Soul Flare from Cog, and just waiting for this wave to get shoved in and try and snip it away.
I think that players like Kogog are so important to the LJL as a region too. I think in the same vein as something like Rayfaki when he's on form. Kogog doesn't kind of stick by the LGL top laners code of just saying, well, we will always play Aatrox.
We play
nah.
nah.
We play Aatrox. I enjoy this. This is great. This is awesome. They actually go and delve a little bit deeper into champion pool. They play a little bit more close to the edge, and that's something which I've been really interested to see from Kanatu too, because against even like Ebby, Ebby, who occasionally has got crossed the line of confidence into arrogance, they have held their enemy top lanes, even of such great proportions to account. Kanatu going to be pushed under tower, pushed off of tower again as Mugen takes those Krugs. We can see if, much like Ace was doing to Hatchmacher, whether they can steal something like that.
That's a big route on Secret, but he does, of course, have a magical journey to escape trouble there. Hatchemecha knows that his Krugs are being taken, can't go and return the favor down the bot side unless he already did it on the minimap and I missed it. Secret, though, once again being taken pretty low, is going to be exhausted, going down very low, flashing away. But now Sol trying to trade back best they can. It's the exhaust for the heal flash and ignite on the other side. Now it's Raptor Scuffles, but just Hatchemecha has to leave it behind. Mugen doing his best to make Hatchemecha's life incredibly difficult, and the lane priority is earning them dividends up there.
Now, isn't that something? Ignite, electrocute on the Bard, looking to punish out the Time Kenshin. Yes, it has led to a 15 CS lead. 2 center W's in a row make you start to sweat. 3 summoners down now. Rascal Jesters with this lane, which they're expecting to be winning heavily with, get themselves, of course, the gold advantage, with a slight scare in the early game.
Indeed they have. Of course, it is a bard. He's pretty hard to lock down if he's close to a wall because magical journey is a thing. But, if you hit the tongue lash and then you can set up from the center W straight after, you really can punish. Of course, it's not Hail of Blades Tom Gench with the really aggressive try and look for the Devour.
That was actually a choice counter of some LPL players into Shen support, because Shen were torn in, and if you didn't have your W up at that point, then you just got slapped by 3 autos very quickly during the taunt, and then suddenly Devour, spit them out backwards, and then you of course, gosh,
great bait. Here comes Mugen as well. There ain't no saving that. First blood to center. V3 pull the bait and get away with it.
And okay, so first off, oops, I was delving too much into 2v2 point. I thought, oh, there's no way this 2v2 gets anything, and I'm just not looking at how dangerously Sol's positioning. They get caught and they go down for first blood, and this is meant to be, again, a very stable part of the map for Rascal Jester. What I was talking about in the pregame was V3, they want to start disrupting the top and jungle of Rascal Jester. That's where they fell apart in that last series. Well, in this case, it's Sol, the star carry, maybe even of the damn region, rather than just this one team, gets caught out uncharacteristically. Seems like V3's 3 spot lane, they were on a reset timing. Hollow was on vision there. So what happens after this point? You see Sol reaches level 6, still has flash, has a jungler coming down, but at this point, scouts around, tries to catch out the recall, but just does not respect the fact that V3 could have been lying in wait.
He thought they'd recalled, he saw Hollow looking for it, and then he backed away. It's like, okay, it's fine. And, smart little bit of a mind game there from V3 to catch Sol out, who thought he was safe, who thought he was okay to shove out there, and just didn't read the continued bush bait. Of course, not now the best reset timing in some ways for Hollow and Rhino, but the problem is you've got Abyssal Voyage, which they used to get back to lane, and so they don't lose all that much. Hatchemecha is going to get rooted in place. He's trying to take some Krugs of his own, but as we said, it's harder to invade onto the 2v2 side of the map. And look who's here. It's Recap, maybe looking for something a bit more, and specifically the Mountain Dragon spawning in 30 seconds. And that is kind of where Rascal Jesters can continue to try and stack something of an advantage or win condition.
So Recap managed to find their way down towards bot lane, and of course, a couple of games today that we've cast have been more bot-centric than we have been used to in a little while. This is really feeling like a 2020 LJL game. It's kind of going back a bit more towards what we were familiar with in 2020 spring. But we had Zoe versus LeBlanc so many times when we had these lanes which were, of course, a lot of Senna was around at that point too, although that was more often banned than not. But it gave a lot more bot lane pressure, and at least the ability to zone off and try and deny some waves. In this game, though, V3 find themselves 1,000 gold lead. And what we were asking last game of E3 is, okay, what's going to happen if things don't go to scripts? They are keeping things on the page right now.
They certainly are, and that's another W landing. Secret, remember, still no flash, but kind of fine right now with the Tempered Fate, has got some outplay potential should the all-ins come through, or should they want to all-in themselves, honestly. Hachimecha now coming down is going to be off vision. The sweeper is there. There is the ward in that bush, though, which will now be revealed and taken out. Hachimecha will instead have to retreat, having attempted the late gank.
So what I'm looking at now is where are the breakpoints? Where do things give, right? Because there's something of an amount of pressure coming across the map. It might be Ace if they get caught bubble. Not going to. But Rascal Jester, are you waiting to get the Poke Fest started up? What's going to happen around these next ranks? Because there is, of course, the Herald going to be put down from V3. I think V3 are hesitant to give Rascal Jesters an opening to start using their range advantages. But they, in this, if they overextend, this could be dangerous.
Teleport plus the magical journey through the wall. It is a gank path as old as Bard. The Dawning Shadow comes out, but the Needlework is flying. Hachimecha gets the Tahm Kench, but Ace gets Bard in turn. It's still not done, though, because the arrows keep flying and Hollow's hate bar is just not high enough, and the Jesters come out and top in the bot lane play.
The psychology checks out from V3. They look at what's happening with the Zoe, with the Bard, with the Pharros. They do not want to give Rascal Jesters the shooting gallery, but in attempting to use the Herald or release their pressure down bot side to keep Rascal Jesters back and away and out of shooting range, they overextend themselves. This is what happens. Mugen shows on the bot wave, as Olaf so often does, and just comes into lane and says, hey, let's come and fight.
Oh, that temper phase.
It is at the expense of their bot lane. Hollow is not devoured in time and has to go on the run. They get burned out. They don't quite actually get burned down. It is just going to be the Olaf and the Tahm Kench coming down. It's a 2-for-1 overall, but this is breaking the early momentum that V3 had so far.
That tempered fate to catch out Hollow was sublime. And then actually afterwards, it's Hallowed Mist and the Crescent Guard that just prevent the turnaround. They just get to sit there and attack you, and you're too far away. You flashed out, you can't continue to trade. And that sort of conditional immunity from damage from both the top and jungle of Rascal Jester is really coming up trumps at the end of that fight.
So your temper fate is now on cooldown. We do see Cog still on top side. Herald, after the failed attempt, bot will be placed at top instead. They could look to do this, but there is Hachimecha around and available to dissuade any dive attempts. But who else is here? It's Ace. They're on it again.
They are indeed. The Herald gets taken. They think maybe better of this dive. They get another 2 plates, but the top tower doesn't quite fall. It's still about 1,000 gold lead to V3 right now.
No teleport and recap. He's got a ghost inventory from Spellbook, and I'm not even too sure if he would have had it available. But now Ryder and Hollow
not being engaged on. The Tempered Fate misses there. Now they can turn around potentially. Secret gets hit by the last Embrace again. It's what you get for playing forward so much. Tries to outplay the chain there by stepping forward with the skip and slash to Skinati, but doesn't really get all that much of the time. And we're kind of left with a bit of a testy contest around these towers in top and bot, but no real hard engages.
Not just yet. I mean, there's some trading in the mid lane as double sigil trade comes in from Ace. But yeah, both of these teams looking to find their openings, waiting around the corner, waiting in the shadows, seeing if there is anything to be gained from any of these players across the map. There isn't just yet, but the fact that they're looking and calling the playoff when it's obviously not going to work out is still a bonus to them.
Nice move of the Hallowed Mist there, by the way, to just pull it out of range to prevent the damage coming through in the second tick. That was pretty nice. No gold from plates for the Jesters. Fair amount of plate gold for V3. I don't think they claimed all of it, considering 4 plates go down, but they only got 480 gold.
Well, on the other side, Rascal Jester got none of them. 0
exactly.
gold for 2 plates. Must have been just the waves shoved in, which he took off the last tick of them in favor of reset timings. That's one of the sad things, right?
Yes.
Which I remember playing back in season 4 and saying, "Oh,
old man Nightmare starts yelling at clouds.
I have to keep pushing in waves. Oh, but there's just one more minion wave." And actually, learning about reset timings is a very important factor, League of Legends. If you're not back on the map because you got yourself a wave the last time, but you're not in position to collect the next one, you lose it out in the next point. Will Hollow be losing his life if he dodges the ult?
He does, but he has to flash away from the binding afterwards. That was a nice little play there from Rascal Jester to threaten the Senna, who is kind of a big part of the target, especially because she's the fasting one, doesn't get the same amount of XP, doesn't get the same levels to work with, so it can be a bit of a target. But the pressure towards the bot side finally gives Cog room to take down that top tier 1 that the Herald chunked out so heavily earlier.
So we don't have ourselves a dragon yet. It's 2 minutes up. Rascal Jester continually looking to play around the bottom. That's good, because I'm glad that they're not itchy on that they're not reticent or recalcitrant. What's the word? Recalcitrant?
Recalcitrant works, but
Yeah.
in what terms? I'm gonna need you to give me some context.
Not very confident with going forward. Being a little bit, as you were saying, kind of a bit
Reticent.
testy.
I
about
think I'll go with
No,
reticent
Sure,
in
that's
this
a word. Lots of words, which he probably knows better than me because he has the degree.
I do.
But I'm glad that Secret has been once again leading the charge because this was alongside Sol, one of those all-pro players from that spring 2021 split. Coming off of the laning phase a little less well than they would have liked, given that this is meant to be one of the most dominant early lanes in League, with the Varus against the Senator and Kench. Now coming into this mid game, they are within sight of E3. You have that Olaf, who is meant to be doing well early, against that Karma, who is also a lane bully early. They're still within sight, and that's a good thing for Rascal Jester.
That it is. Of course, you got Karma plus Olaf. That's a big shield. You have a lot of people with the Gore Drinker. That sounds pretty great. And also, like, yeah, Gwen and the Jin Zhao, took me a second there, have great immunity for people outside of their Thunderdomes. Olaf would love to get into that Thunderdome, especially if he's being backed up by the Karma. So I sort of see the option into those champions there from Muujin, who is, in fairness, very good with his Gore Drinker champions. Just asked DFM last week. What a play that was. But we're going to be setting up for an Ocean Drake. Will be Soul Point for Rascal Jesters. And I think they've got vision control right now to the Jesters.
V3, remember, they had the Herald, they had the Olaf going topside, they had the dominant 1v1 in top, but Rascal Jesters have responded with objectives on the bot side. Herald now placed in mid. If V3 can get this outer turret, we'll have this conversation again, but it is getting chunked down. The eye opens up again. I don't think they're going to get it. It's a wasted Herald.
It lost its charge. That's so sad. Not quite sure how it
wasn't in range. It got calibrated minions.
Wow, there you go. That's unfortunate. Does mean that V3 get to move into the river, though. Ace is on a flank. Could look for something here. Secret, a likely target. 4-level difference. Ace finally spotted out. Cog takes a bit of a chunk themselves, but of course does have the piercing darkness and the light to potentially keep them alive as Recap and Sol just throwing out all the poke in the world. Wait. You're thinking about it. The Temper Fate comes out afterwards. The snips come through, but Hollow, I don't think it's going to be that bad because the Cosmic Binding is mistimed. Running out, flashing away. The Hallow Mist is there, and Jin Zhao dives afterwards. The conditional immunity still so strong. Kinatu snipping and snapping and ghosting forwards, and that makes a very fast seamstress indeed. Recaps over the wall. The bubble goes a long way out, and that is going to be 2-for-0 in favor of the Jesters, and they can get themselves a soul point after this, unless V3 feel they still have available. There is a Smite Steel available. There's an Abyssal Voyage available as well if they can hold on for long enough. Ace goes in with the chains, trying his absolute best, but Varus just deletes them. Dawning Shadow back up though. Hatchet just having to run away. Secret's so low as well. They can't finish the Drake. Sol's trying, but look at Coco over the wall. He's trying to get something. Varus secures the Ocean Soul point, and Kinatu is there to run people down, and somehow, someway, Rascal's Jesters get out only losing Hatchemecha.
But they get out with like 1,000 HP combined between all 4 surviving members because they have the mobility advantage. They have themselves stolen flashes, Gwen, Ease, and they managed to keep the Olaf off of their faces. V3, they have Ace on the side. They're looking for the miracle combo. This is the kind of point where that kind of damage means a lot. But yes, while Ace goes in and gets Kinatu stunned up, Hollow is caught on the other side by not just one skill shot, but several, and the Senna is out of the fight before they can even use the ultimate. Rascal Jesters after this point, well, they have that ghost on the Gwen. They have themselves the ability to run forward with, as we were saying, the stolen summoner spells. And while most of the time when a Karma is in play, you expect them to be the team that can disengage, it is not the case right here. Recap very dangerously checks that, but still has a stopwatch, has a stolen flash. Muujin tries their best. We said that Muujin diff has so often been the winning factor for Muujin, who smites to get the extra HP. He cannot finish off so many of these members. Does get onto the Jin Zhao. It's too little too late. They've taken their prize, and they take the team fight.
The first axe gets stopwatched. Recap has a stolen flash to get away. Secret survives on 5 HP. Magical journeys away. Recap sidesteps the third axe. Gets away he finally gets run down, but it takes a long while. Muujin was that close to getting absolutely everybody there. Look at the damage there from that Olaf. He was so close. Yeah. But Rascal Jesters in the end are the ones that come out with the coin flip going their way, even if V3 made them sweat.
You know what actually ended up being a really big factor in that? A lot of wayward bar W's, just littered about the place to just step on, get that extra HP when they were put into full fruition, the extra move speed, particularly against Mugen, who is, again, the Olaf. If you can stay away from him, it doesn't really do much. If he tags the axe, that's one thing, but you already went through the list of how many axes were dodged from that one. Rascal Jesters have survived the early game. V3 had a strong start, but what can V3 do now that their Olaf's time in the sun is starting to fade? Recap and Sol are online. They have their items built up, getting towards their second with all the penetration, both armor and magic resist as well. All of that penetration going to be going straight through the majority of this very squishy lineup from V3. Sol, though, has flash, has heal, needs to get out of dodge, though.
That's a lot of damage. It has to flash the axe. Mugen, once again, getting frustrated by all these mobility options to get away from his undertows, and they're not getting sucked under, and that's clearly a bit frustrating for the marauding Viking. First items, how complete at this point, as you can see. The point is, though, that as I speak about it, Sol gets his second, transformed Muramana in inventory.
Minutes.
He was already chunking absolutely everyone to high heaven. He'll be doing it even more so now with that empowered sword.
So, I mean, in the past, you often got your Muramana for the third dragon. Is slightly harder to stack nowadays, particularly when it's not quite as fast stacking as it was back in the day when you used to get the full Manamune transformation. But getting it at this point is still very important for Rascal Jesters. Now Sol lands an arrow onto particularly that LeBlanc, also even stuff like the Karma too, if they don't get that shield up in time. And suddenly V3 get worried about the amount of HP they have to play with. We saw this again with that first Herald fight, which went so wrong for V3, or rather like the Herald placing down in bot side. They tried to stave off Rascal Jester and say, you want to poke, we're not going to let you do that, we're going to keep up the tempo. They failed that with the overextension. Well, now they have to deal with being behind and facing down that same threat again.
50 seconds until Ocean Soul fight. This, I suspect, ladies and gentlemen, will be it. And by it, it could be any number of things, one way or another. This
By either way,
deciding.
It'll be it. Either way.
This is it. Exactly. It being ambiguous, deliberately so. Now, Mara, what am I looking at? What items should I be paying attention to? Any champions, sir?
So there is now the Zonya's fully completed on the Zoe. So how important that was to buy out that time to save themselves from the Olaf on top of them. But there is a Putrefier and the Shirelli is built up on the Karma. They have their two items which are very powerful to them. And in the 5v5 Karma is Queen of Enchanters when you do get to start running forward. Dragon spawning in 10, ace over the wall, pops back.
80 miss, just hit the center in time for this fight as well. Big slows coming through the piercing darkness, Sol over the wall though. Lands a chain of corruption, but Hollow, of course, has got shields and now he goes into the curse of the black mist. Makes it a lot harder to spot. The bubbles come flying over the wall. Secret and, of course, Kinati doing the best. Recap over the wall, trying their absolute hardest as well. Massive damage! Sol's alive, he gets over the wall by the blast fire, and Sol the Dawning Shadow! Kills him off! The Varist is done for, but look at Gwen on the backside, she's gone golden. She's got a snip. She gets one. Hachimetra gets the other, but he's dead. Ace gets that one. But now they've got to run away. Hollow has got flash. He's going to need to use it, but Nobri gets knocked up by the 3. Talon, strike! And you're out. Third fight in the row. And it'll be a 4th Drake. That's a little bit more than baseball. Either way, Ocean Soul secured for Rascal Jester.
Rascal Jesters are done joking around. No Jesters to be found here. Just Kings on the Rift this time. Looking to take away V3's perfect record and drag themselves even on that win column. Team fighting like the very best of them, and honestly, they might be the very best in the LJL right now.
Contraire, Nymera, they might be Jesters, but they always get the last laugh. Tell me about it in this fight.
So, of course, right here, Sol is separated. Uses that ult, tries to get a tricky angle, but doesn't get a huge amount of damage. Then Zoe's counterplay comes in. If they jump forward, you know exactly where they're going to come back. Ace pounces, but Kinato and Hachimetra manage to get through to the rest of the fight. They split the fight, and yes, the Varus goes down, but it is not at it's not at no expense, because both of these tanky regen brawlers get right into the thick of things, stack up the Conquerors, use their temporary front lines, and trade their HP in for kills.
Man alive, and now Ocean Soul with double poke and a Gwen
Ridiculous.
and a Gore Drinker Xin Zhao. V3 have, like, at least they've got anti-heal, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Secret is going to be a little upset from that, though, because the one thing the Jesters don't have is massive HP bars. And if they get 100 to 0, and there is an option for that, especially once Ace completes the death cap, there is a world where the Ocean Soul's just not
Absolutely,
enough.
and remember, this is not a Guardian Bard. You can drop a W at your feet, and yes, that's nice. But LeBlanc going for Death Cap second with the Ludens, not the Leandries, for that healing damage over time, is a win condition for V3, or at least just one play pattern for V3 to start looking for. Sleep, that's why we have... Oh, it's the double golden!
Oh, that's kind of nice, Secret. Won't get too much more for it. They're still continue to shove through, but this is the problem. They can continue to poke and regen, because remember, it's HP bars, but Ocean Drakes also give you mana regen, so you can just sit there and just keep poking out, and there's very little to stop this from happening. You need to find the hard engage, or you just fall down. Mugen's running away as fast as he can. Piercing Darkness heals him up somewhat, but they just can't hold on to the mid-tier 1.
Rascal Jesters have been painfully aware of what Rascal Jesters can do if they get to stand and fire. But with this soul being picked up, with the items being picked up and the gold leaf firmly clenched by the red team, they don't have much to say about it. They have looked for occasional hard engages, looking for picks with LeBlanc. We said, hey, if LeBlanc gets ahead, gets a lead, there is something to play around there, but this something is not enough. If you don't finish the kill, yes, they have those smaller HP bars, they don't really stay low for that long, because the Ocean Soul, because of this Bard, are going to keep them topped up, and Rascal Jesters can return back to firing their skill shots at you.
They certainly can. So, gold lead is only about 2,000 on paper, but I tell you, that with the Ocean Soul inventory, that's a few thousand gold worth of stats right there.
And 4 basic dragons is nothing to sniff at too. Extra 10 ultimate cooldown haste as well. A Mountain Soul, nothing to sniff at alongside.
Oh, a soul as well as an Ocean Soul, that's fair.
The mountain dragon, right? Yeah. So the extra resist, very important at this point too, particularly when you have recap. You have built up just a little bit in there. Every little helps when it comes to not getting one shot by the LeBlanc, which is pretty much the one thing V3 have going for them right now.
Gwen now building towards potentially a death cap here. Interesting. You're not going towards Nash's Tooth with that needlessly large rod in inventory. Or the Zhonya's. Unusual build there. Not the standard thing I've seen on a Gwen. But
We've seen less Nash's Tooth in pro play than I think we were suspecting from solo queue, because often you're not really given free time to hit towers, which is where a lot of that comes in. And you're not left alone in 1v1s. You want to get that multi-man queue. So when that is finally completed, they still have that stopwatch, which means that they effectively have the utility of the Zhonya's just that one time, right? That's more than enough if there's just going to be one fight to end this game. Now, Ace does have the Mimic. I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, and the Mimic Distort gets them out to safety. It will come at the cost of the tier 1 in top lane. Not a lot of structures have gone down this game. It's been much more around posturing for dragons. 28 minutes into the game, only 3 towers finally falling for Rascal Jesters and only 1 for V3. Says a lot about how this one's working out. The Tempered Fate goes wide. Hatchemet has gone in very deep. Has the Crescent Guard survived. The teleport's coming in behind now. Bubble goes wide, but Kinatu gets exhausted now. In a spot of bother, the Hallowed Mist will buy space. The Needlework is going to do as much as they can. Last or use of the ultimate comes through. The Undertows are there, and Ocean Soul means they just get to heal up.
And getting to steal the Shirelias is a non-trivial thing at this point too, because if you force the Shirelias in the retreat, well, Zoe gets to pick it up and either use it to ping back and retreat themselves at a later point, or of course follow up at that point. Rascal Jesters look for the engage. V3 successfully escape that one for the first time in quite a while. Actually, Rascal Jesters have been on point, but now rather secret with those ultimates coming through. Baron, of course, on the table. 29 minutes in. We haven't had an early Baron this time because you don't want to sit in that pit and allow people like that LeBlanc to start jumping in over the pit, getting multiple distorts onto pick key targets. They don't have the Tom Kench themselves, the Rascal Jesters, to save someone from immediate assassination. So Rascal Jesters, understandably, even with this lead, with the soul, and with the slight gold lead, do not want to tempt fate, certainly don't want to tempt Ace.
Indeed, that death cap, as you mentioned, looking pretty terrifying right now. 3 items in for Karma. She's got a redemption as well to make things trickier as they can make it. It's 20 seconds till the Elder Drake. Who cares about Baron? Both these teams are saying it's not important. These Drakes are where this game is being decided. Elder could be the ticket back in for V3, but it's going to be a hard fight.
It will be because they have to come into Rascal Jester. They have established zone control. They have established their priority over the map so far. They have the range advantage to keep getting away chips and chunks out of V3's health bar.
With the Banshees failed completely for recap as well, it's so hard to poke them out even when they do go forward so aggressively. I love this option for a Zoe that's ahead. You can just be so obnoxious when you're looking for the poke and the picks. Try to get something on the Varus there with the chains, but they won't be able to get as much down as they would like. Ace continuing to think about going over the wall, hops forwards, throws out a Sigil of Malice. Temper Fate goes
again.
wide. But now V3 have position in the river. They've got to be a little afraid of all the poke that can fly through there, and they start retreating away as Ace continues to be a nuisance on the flank.
And Rascal Jesters end on the same HP that they started. They just cannot get chunked out right now.
Recop's got a heal. He's just picked up a heal as well. Like, it's just so ridiculous. Unless V3 find the absolute hard engage, unless they can blow someone up, they are going to lose these fights purely because Ocean Song is so easily procced. Well, Kinatu is going to start picking up the wards there, but I don't think he can be engaged on. Reiner and Ace just getting shoved further and further back in their own jungle. Elder Dragon not being started quite yet. But now Muujin getting shielded out and trying to get away. Kinatu gets slowed and it's just looking harder and harder. The longer this fight goes on, the longer they have to wait around, the more this poke advantage, the more this healing advantage continues to favor the Jesters.
They do have the Senna who's getting through multiple cooldowns of that Q. Rascal Jesters, they don't need to hard commit to this objective. Again, they are winning the poke battle. Why flip it and they cash Hollow finally?
Finally, on the third time I'm asking, they find a Temper Fate that lands now. Reiner has to catch him out with the Devour. He's trying to escape his Hollow. He's got a flash, does so. He's got a heal as well. He's on inches of HP. But Recap steps forward and gets the kill. Kinatu got Tom Gench on the other side of the fight. And with a Ragnaroking Olaf going the wrong direction, it's game over. The end of the world for V3 in this game as Rascal Jester will secure the Elder Drake and probably rotate over to Baron to boot.
Hollow has been playing so respectfully and managing to sidestep just enough to keep V3 alive in these fights. But with a hop, a skip, and a portal jump, Recap finds their man. Doesn't matter how much items they have at that point. They have themselves a Rage Blade and Sunder. Yes, that's a bit of HP. Yes, it's a little bit of healing and got a good amount of turnaround damage too. Hollow cannot survive after their Tahm Kench is separated away from them. Secret finally hits their target.
2v a lot of people. Secret's dead! That's what you like to see. Dawning Shadow comes through, and that is a decent pickup. But remember, it's still into Elder Dragon. They get a pick, and they have to back out because they cannot win the 4v5, I suspect, still. Muujin needs to be very afraid here because he's going to be very close to the execute range. Good lord, the healing is trying his absolute best. Not quite enough. My days, the shields from Karma, and Hachimech has gone in. They can't quite kill him. Muujin, you're playing with fire still going in. He gets healed and now devoured, trying to escape desperately. They're hunting for more. The hail of arrows is there. The shields, the thick skin. Reiner surviving, and they somehow extricate themselves. Extraction complete for now until Recap. Good lord, he's inches from getting an execute.
That's what we call playing liberally with health bars. Elder Dragon execute is not something to be trifled with, but neither is the LeBlanc. We have set up this point for about 12 bloody minutes at this point. If LeBlanc finds their target, it doesn't matter how much regen they have, they are getting zeroed out. Secret is the one to fall down, but with this fighting retreat, the rearguard action, V3 do not have enough time to reset for the Baron, and that goes to Rascal Jester. At least they survive most of the Elder buff with that in tow.
Yeah, they managed to drain out about half of the Elder Dragon buff. It's about 45 seconds left on it. 2 minutes post that, which the Baron will be on as well. But it does mean I suspect they're going to have to seed at least an inhibitor here.
And I mean, as much as they got Muujin out of there, it felt less like saving Private Olaf and more like, well, Dunkirk, trying to get those little boats back to base. But it is a retreat and a loss at that. Ace is on the flank, potentially looking for their next piece of prey.
He's pulling an SAS here, trying to be the Secret Service in the background, that Special Forces agent to get an execute, to get the assassination. But they just have to seed out this inhibitor. 10 seconds on the Elder Dragon buff, and Ace is just not been spotted as yet. Recap's hopping over the wall.
This is all they have to play around. This is
So
all there is.
difficult.
Ace, for so long has been this player who has been less about individual leads and team play. This is the one champion, maybe alongside their Syndra, who has really stepped up and given him the tools to make the game-saving plays. Has he got Hachimecha?
Tempered Fate catches Reiner on the other side. Ace having to back away. Exhaust onto Kinatu, stepping forward. The needlework starts flying. Sol gets a hold of the target. No chance to pass the thick skin. Now Hachimecha into the backside. Helps Kinatu execute Senna. She's dead. Muujin gets cut down to size. And Kinatu continues to make it like Edward Scissorhands. It's a horror story. And the swan song will be a last encore for Rascal Jester. They'll take a bow. They'll move to 4-0. Oh, they'll move to 3-0. I apologize, and put V3 down to 3-1. It was a hell of a game, but Ocean Soul is just too much to beat.
36 minutes. It's a labored attempt for Rascal Jester, partly kept in bay by Ace, but Ace is not the ace in the hole this time. It's Jester's high, 3-0.
My days, what a game that was. It started pretty competitive in the early game, but Dragon stacking, man, just so much to work with. Either way, I think we do have to cut to a quick break. Much as I would love to continue talking about this game, we do need to collect our thoughts, because when we come back, we'll have much more in-depth analysis. Don't you guys go anywhere. See you after the quick break. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, after a hell of a game of the week. Really lived up to its billing. It was a pretty close, pretty quiet early game in a lot of ways. But for me, lots started happening kind of around those side lanes, particularly the bot lane where action finally started breaking out.
So this was a comp from V3, which had an Olaf and it had a Karma. You know that you can kind of prop up the Olaf going into the mid-game fights, but it's still an early game comp, right? Because you can push in top, you know that's stable, it's hard to gank the Karma too. And then the Olaf gets to run through most of the map at that point.
Yes.
They get themselves an early Herald. But bot lane, oh gosh, that is...
The Void.
Oh, the Void has consumed us, just as it consumed V3,
Well
as
done.
they overstepped in bot lane. I need to refresh that cache. That one is really not looking fun for us. And we're back.
Hello. A little
So,
bit
because
pixelated.
what we saw was, again, V3 were terrified of what would happen if things got to an objective fight where the Zarya and the Varus could really set up shop. So they aimed to stop that with a Herald bot side, but they overextended into doing that too. So it's the right psychology, right? They understand what's happening. But Rascal Jester, on the other side of that, kind of read the play themselves because it was just a tad too obvious. They respond in kind, and it kind of gets them out of the slight early game deficit that they had. And at that point, kind of felt the Rascal Jester, whenever they got to the objective first, were destined to win that fight. V3 kept it in the balance, though.
They did. They got a couple heralds, which they used to get some good advantages in the side lanes and keep the goal close. And the goal really was close for pretty much all of that game until it finally kind of ended. But I think at this point, we've talked about the dragon stacking. We've talked about, Secret maybe getting a little bit antsy on the bar. There were some close things going on down there. But it really was finally decided at the Ocean Soul fight. Jesters had stacked it. And this was the fight that broke the camel's back.
It was. So this was, of course, about 23, 24 minutes into the game. And Sol and Recap are separated from their front line on the side. Ace pounces in, as does Mujin. But they just about escape. Yes, the Varus goes down, but we can see what happens when you have like your new age champions like Yujinzo with after the reworks and the Gwen get going, compared to an Olaf who only has the Ragnarok to keep them mobile in the fight. Hachimetra and Kanatu can keep going forward, stacking up their conquerors and closing down Hollow and whoever else gets in their way. And after that fight was done, that's Ocean Soul. We saw what happened after that point. The poke battle was already in favor of Rascal Jesters. There were some times where Ace was looking dangerous. The one shot onto the Bard. It was a moment of brightness for V3. But if they couldn't finish off the target, well, that's exactly what Ocean Soul really brings to you. It means that you are never starting in a fight at low HP.
Yeah, and there were some points there where, like, actually, the Gwen and the Jinzao were phenomenal front lines in this game because, have the Hollowed Mist into the Crescent Guard. Both of them could tank up a lot of people. Senna didn't really want to be in there. Mujin could go in, but he's kind of by himself in a Karma Shield, and there's only so much you can heal out of. And then, as you said, the moment the soul comes through, it's double poke. It's double healing frontline. Like, who can sort of avoid burst by using their ult or their W. That is so hard for just V3 to come back from. And look at the comp. I mean, Ace blows people up, but everyone else, you're kind of looking to try and drain tank people down. Even Senna's not necessarily about pure burst. You want to kind of run you down with the Glacial Augment. And V3 did well to hold on, but did they have any chance close to that soul?
It was literally just all on Ace. Can LeBlanc find an angle? And almost did. Actually did once or twice. Wasn't enough, though. We saw some very intricate plays coming out of V3 where they're trying to set up the map, try and play around those smoke and mirrors. Just wasn't enough at that point. They'd given up too much in those dragons. They'd fallen off from their early spike with that Olaf and other things. And they slowly fell into the abyss.
Yeah. Okay, well, at this point, I think it's probably worth having this opportunity to take a step back and look at the slightly bigger picture here, because this moves Rascal Jester to 3-0. If they win next game versus Sengoku Gaming, who had a frustrating loss earlier in the day when they got a big gold lead, they are then uncontested top of the league. They've showed a few different looks here. They've shown that they can play the Gwen. Are they the best team in the region?
Currently, yes. Currently, they are. They've shown that they understand their win conditions and they understand how their game has to go to get them to that point of power. They don't just, much like CGA, just play to the enemy's composition and try and wrangle things into their own. It was a good contest between them and V3, though. I think we have, with this game, solidified them as the top two, at least until we see something a little bit more special from DFM. Of course, we'll be covering that a little bit later in the day.
Indeed, we will. Which point I think it is time
for us to sign
that
off.
We sign off. At least myself and Nymera. Fun as always casting with you, bro.
As you.
After the break, though, it will be Rascal Jesters and Sengoku facing off. Rascal Jesters looking to claim uncontested first. We've got to take down Sengoku to do so. And on the mics for that one will be none other than Midnight and Melvin Izzle. So get yourselves back in those seats, and we'll see you after the break.